Hi, everybody. Welcome to Defiance of Silence, a Sacred Witness podcast. It's Valerie, your host. This season is devoted to the field of human stories, where we explore the lived experiences that shape us, challenge us, and ultimately connect us. Today, I'm honored to welcome Tennille to the show. For more than 25 years, Tennille stood on the other side of the operating table as a surgical technologist, eventually finding her passion on a plastics and breast reconstruction team, helping care for women whose lives had been changed by breast cancer. In 2021, everything changed for her. At just 41 years old, Tennille became the patient. As a single mom raising her 9-year-old daughter at the time, she faced breast cancer that led to chemotherapy, radiation, multiple surgeries, and a 1.5-year-long fight for her life. But as you're going to hear today, this conversation just isn't about surviving cancer. It's about navigating fear while choosing hope and learning to see the scars as part of your story instead of something to hide. And she discovers, too, that healing doesn't end when treatment does. And she's going to share that with you, too. 3 years now cancer-free, Tennille has dedicated herself to mentoring others that are walking through cancer. And I think that is beautiful and special. This is a conversation about resilience, faith, motherhood, purpose, and what survives when life changes your body, but not your spirit. So before we begin, I'd like to invite you to take a brief moment to ground yourself. Wherever you are, gently pause. Let's take a slow, deep breath in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Let your shoulders soften. Feel your body supported by whatever's beneath you. Allow yourself to arrive fully in this moment, open to listening, reflecting, and connecting. Thank you for witnessing my conversation with Tennille. Welcome, Tennille. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I was just thrilled when you said that you would do this because not a lot of people have the guts and the courage to come and talk about cancer and what it did to them and where it brought them and what it asked of them. And I really appreciate your vulnerability in this. And I know we've talked a lot before, and I've gotten to witness parts of your journey. So
Right.
I am excited for people to hear hope, one, because you carry that, and also just the realities of what it was like for you. But before we dig into, Tennille has cancer, I want to know a little bit about who you were before cancer entered your life. Who are you? What do you love? What do you have ambitions for, and all of those things prior to your diagnosis?
Right. So prior to my diagnosis, my main focus was going back to school for nursing. That was on the front burner because people put things on the back burner. That was on the front burner. I was talking to, the colleges, submitting my transcripts. For those that don't know my back history, I was a surgical tech for I think at that time it was 25 years. I had just hit like the 25-year mark. So I was like, you know what? I want to do bigger, better. I'm going to go back to school for nursing. So that was on the front burner for me to do. And I was working on that, basically getting ready to retake whatever prerequisites were necessary to get into a nursing program, and just basically speaking with counselors and advisors and things like that. At that time, I was working on the plastic surgery reconstruction team at Memorial Hermann, basically doing all the reconstructive, or most of, I could say, me and a partner was doing a lot of the reconstructive breast surgeries for breast cancer patients. And it had become a strong passion of mine. I got trained on breast cancer reconstruction in 1999, which was when I graduated from surgical tech school, got trained at MD Anderson, #1 cancer center. And, I've seen things evolve and transpire and get better over time. So it's a true passion of mine to have been able to provide services for those patients. And so that's kind of where I was when I finally got the breast cancer diagnosis. And it's crazy because a lot of times as a medical professional or someone in that role, you never think that you're going to be the patient. So the day came where I was that person.
Wow. So you kind of had to put the brakes on all the ambitions and all the things that you were planning to do. How old were you when you got that? It was 2021, correct? When you were
Correct.
diagnosed? How old were
Correct.
you?
I was 41.
41. Wow. That's
41.
a lot. So how did you find out at 41? What happened?
So at 41 is when okay, so backstory, COVID was during 20. So I didn't have a mammogram that year. Nobody, I don't think, had a mammogram that year because all elective cases were kind of put to
Right.
the side unless it was an emergency. So, okay, back history, no 2021, no mammogram. I had a mammogram in 19 and 18 for the same mass that was causing me problems and kind of had just transpired and grown and gotten harder. The first two times I went for the mammogram for the mass, they told me, it was just normal breast tissue that had kind of, fused together and it happens, premenopausal or all that. So, being a medical professional, I had heard those things before. So it didn't really bother me because I knew that it was quote unquote a thing, that happened to women that were going into menopausal or premenopausal state, so I didn't really bother. Um, Based on the mammogram that I had, in which I had the 3D, the radiologist told me that there were no worries, it wasn't cancer, so I wasn't going to try to make it be something. So I kind of moved on forward with life. However, post pandemic, I still had the same mass. It had gotten larger. It had gotten harder to the point to where one day I realized that when I reached down to tie my shoes, it was kind of like bulged my arm out. Like I had to readjust my arm because it was on the lateral side, meaning, on the outside of the breast, same side with the arm. So I was like, this is not, something's not right here. So I scheduled another mammogram, not knowing that it was the year to date, I think, 2 years to date that I had had the previous mammogram. I had no idea it was the same month, same day, 2 years ago before the pandemic that I had had, the very last mammogram. Um, so that's kind of, what led me up to that. I was having some pain. I would say they were maybe like sharp shooting pains that I had spoken with one of our um, well-known breast cancer physicians about, and she, recommended some natural things just to, kind of thinking maybe that it was just like cystic, something. So I tried that, nothing worked. So then that's what led me to schedule the mammogram because I was like, okay, well, it's time again because even though nothing was wrong 2 years ago, maybe something's wrong now.
Yeah. And no one's expecting that at 41. Like,
Right.
so you get the mammogram, you find out that you have breast cancer. When you hear the words you have breast cancer, like, what do you remember most about that moment?
Most about that. Well, I knew the day that I got the mammogram, I pretty much knew that I had cancer.
Wow.
The reason I say that, I guess sometimes medical professionals know too much. So I could tell by the way their body language, I could tell. And
Yeah.
then the fact that they were wanting me to come back as soon as possible, like 2 days later for a biopsy. I was like, okay. So I scheduled it. I went back, I got the biopsy. During the biopsy, they were real, like just jittery. They're saying, things that they probably didn't think I knew because I don't think I exposed the fact that I was a medical professional. So I could just tell by some of the terminology and the concerns that they had, I was like, this is probably something.
Hmm.
And the technician that was there, she just kept giving me stuff, like the free items they had. She was overdoing it. I had got like 5 or 10 pins. And so I'm like, okay, this is something. Long story short, they told me a 7 to 10 day window before I would get the results from the biopsy. And so waited, patiently waited on some news. The day that they told me, the radiologist had already sent the results to my gynecologist who initially sent me for the mammogram, the prescription. He called me over the phone, did not schedule an office visit, just called. I was at work that day. Um, when I got the phone call, I was kind of expecting the news, more or less. So I kind of walked away from my desk. He told me what it was, told me that, asked me if it was okay that he go ahead and call the breast surgeon that he would have me go to, oncologist and things like that. And I was like, sure. Um, so I cried a bit. I cried and I I didn't go home. I didn't I ran to my director's office at the time because I felt like that was a safe place and I think thank God today still for that same place. I ran to her office. She wasn't there, and I'm texting her urgently, "Can you get to the office?" And she's thinking the worst, in the operating room, something's bad has happened. But I was hysterically crying and explained to her what, that I finally, after 5 or 10 minutes, got it out, the news I had been told. And she asked me if I wanted to go home for the day, and I said no. I went back to my desk and I finished working for the day. And I don't think reality set in for quite some time after that.
Yeah, that sounds very intense. And
Yeah.
so what was the point when it became real? Like, how did that come out?
I think it became real maybe once I started getting the phone calls. Like literally that same day, or maybe the next couple days, I received phone calls for an MRI, for a CT scan, for blood work, for, all these different tests and all these different images that they wanted. And at that point, once I started confirming those appointments, that's when things I think got real for me because I'm like, okay, yes, I'm going through the process of trying to figure out where I am in this stage of breast cancer.
Yeah. So what stage were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed at stage 2B, as in boy.
Okay.
So the two, from what I understand, is basically just like where the breast cancer is based on the size of the mass, the type of breast cancer, and things like that. So my mass was 5 centimeters at that time, about the size of a golf ball, more or less, which is why I felt it, when I would was moving my arm on that side, and then the B, because it had spread to my lymph nodes.
Mm,
So I had a mass that was um, malignant, and then during the surgery that they took me in for to get the portacast, which is for the chemotherapy treatment, for those that didn't know, um, they did do biopsy some more of the lymph nodes, and so out of the 7 that were taken out, 5 were positive for cancer.
wow. So that significantly changes your treatment for those that don't know. So you had to do chemo. Did you do radiation also?
I did radiation as
And you
well.
also had surgery.
I had multiple surgeries. Yes.
Yeah, we'll get to the multiple surgeries later.
Mm.
And I was around for some of that part of your journey,
Yes.
so we'll
Yes.
get to that. But it fascinates me that you spent so much time caring for women with breast cancer,
Yes.
and then suddenly you're the patient instead of the surgical tech, and
Yes.
you're on the table. And like you said, sometimes we know too much. It's like
Yes.
how 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 do you how do you process that? Did that make it easier or harder knowing excuse me, knowing what was coming?
I think parts of it, there were pros and cons. So I think there were parts of it that I would rather had not known as far as like the surgical part of it and, what was going to be exposed and what wasn't and, the whole process of leading up to the surgery and what would go on. That part was quite scary to be the patient. However, I think, and I always tell people the con part of having my operating room history or surgical history, um, as far as a career is concerned, it really helped me to understand a lot more of what was going to happen to me and at what point during my journey things were going to happen. And it made me feel a lot better that I actually knew the physicians that were operating on me and caring for me.
Yeah.
I feel I actually put myself in the place of a patient at some point, and that this is where my journey took a positive turn for the better, because I put myself in the shoes of a patient that may not have known their surgeon, um, or their team or because I got to handpick my team members because, of course, working in the operating room, I'm like, "Hey, I want this nurse.
That is a
I want
perk.
this person." So
Yes.
I think those things that I had a choice, to make, I think those
Yeah.
things made my journey a lot easier. But like I said, some of the downside was knowing what was actually going to happen to
Yeah.
me. The things that most people don't know, until they
Yeah.
wake up. I knew that part.
Yeah,
So
so you had a sense of control, which normally in this, you're right, like, as a patient going into this blind,
yeah,
I feel for patients that don't. I say this often, like, in our line of work, having kind of the insider perspective, like, most people don't get that
right,
opportunity, so I can imagine the anxiety and the tension and the fear that goes with that, but you being able to have a little bit of control over, at least I know who's gonna be
right.
in my room and how this is gonna go, but from a surgical tech perspective or even a nurse perspective, you don't get to see the recovery part at home, like what the patient's gone through between surgery 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
Correct.
So, how was that for you being in between those spaces where it was the unknown?
It was an awakening, I would say that. Every surgery that I had, every recovery that I had was a true awakening for how people feel post-op. As operating room staff, our main focus is to care for the patients in the operating room. And we may or may not see them again. Some of them are repeats, but I would say most of the time they're not. So we never hear about the recovery and the drains that they have in, and how do you shower with drains, and how do you maneuver, you know, just life in general with a scar and things
Yeah.
like that. I think those are the parts that we don't get to experience, and those are some of the things that were aha moments for me, I would say, as the patient.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to touch on something else too.
Hmm.
During this time, you were a single mom.
Yes.
So, how old was your daughter?
So at the time of diagnosis, my daughter was 9.
Okay.
She was 9 years old, and to have to tell her that I had breast cancer was one of the worst things I would say that I've had to do in my life. Um, she had a perspective already of cancer, having had a classmate that died from cancer.
Oh, wow.
I think it was kindergarten or first grade or so. She had a classmate that would have these chronic headaches, and parents took her to the doctor. She had a brain tumor. Of course, they had to tell the class because all the classmates are looking for her. And unfortunately, she wound up passing away from that. And so, the class, I guess, at that age, learned about cancer and the worst part of it, like
Oh
the worst case
gosh.
scenario.
Yeah.
So, when I did tell my daughter that I had cancer, which I wanted to be the one to tell her, I was very, I guess it was an urgency that I told her, because once I found out, and a couple of family members, I shared with a couple of family, I did not want anyone to accidentally, speak of it around her. And I knew she would just be devastated if she heard it from someone other than myself. So it was somewhat of an urgency after I found out about my diagnosis that I let her know.
Ugh.
Um, so I did tell her in the presence of family members, just so that she would know that she had a circle of supporters around her during this journey. However, that was like a death wail. I mean, it was the loudest wail that I
Oh.
had ever heard from a child.
Oh.
Just to know that her mind went automatically to worst case scenario. So at that point in time, I felt like it was necessary to explain to her that technology has grown. Doctors are great. I was just letting her know how positive things were before I told her about that. Hey, your mom has cancer. I started my conversation with all the positive things about physicians and treatment and technology and things like that, just so that she would have a positive foundation before I told her, hey, by the way, I had breast cancer.
Yeah. I imagine that that was a hard conversation. Can I ask you something though? Just like, did you believe all of that when you told her? Or were you pep talking yourself, or did you really like when you had I'm just curious about your mindset when you had this conversation. Like, was it something you were like, I'm going to be positive about this no matter what? Or did you really, really believe that everything was going to come out okay?
I really believe that everything was going to come out okay. And I think the breast surgeon that I chose was had a lot to do with that. At my very first visit, which is where I found out what diagnosis, what type of cancer do I have. It was at that visit that I realized I'm in a much better place than someone was 10 years ago,
Yeah.
because she explained that to me. She explained based on the type of cancer that I was diagnosed with, which was HER2 positive. She explained to me, hey, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this was a death sentence, or we didn't have treatment for this, or the treatment that we had or we thought we had didn't work. So, her explaining to me that I was in a much better place than I would have been previously, in past years, just made me feel better. So I feel like that, in combination with my own will to fight and beat this, I had it.
Yeah. You definitely radiated positivity even in some of your hardest times. I got to see just a small glimpse of that being your coworker.
Yeah, thank you.
And so looking back now, what do you think that she learned from watching you through this?
Definitely strength. I think she learned strength. I think she learned endurance. I think she learned fight. I think she learned prayer. I'm gonna put prayer first because we prayed daily, for me, for her. But I think that the strength that she saw me maintain during the journey as a single mom, still providing, still doing all the things that we normally did, I think it taught her a lot about what she can do or accomplish in life, no matter what.
Yeah, that's
I was
powerful.
hesitant, as a single mom to still do certain things that I had done for her in the past because I knew that my immune system was challenged. But I just got to a point to where, I was like, you know what, Layla, this is nothing for us to be embarrassed about. So, at she was 9 at the diagnosis. I still was able to give her a 10th birthday party. I just provided masks for everybody, and I made it, like, part of the party, you know? I still gave her birthday parties. I still had her in extracurricular activities. She still swam. I still got her to the swim meets. Whatever it is that she wanted to do, I didn't want life to change, um, you know, for her. And
Yeah.
so my goal was to always look like my normal self, which is why I think I always wore a wig. Part of the time I wore the wig. I always kept kept my makeup on. I kept my lipstick on, eyebrows. Even when they fell out, I drew the eyebrows.
Yeah.
And it was my look for her was important because I didn't want her to see me look sick.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds to me like you put those pink boxing gloves on and went for it is what I hear.
Most
And
definitely.
that is something that just proves that mindset really does matter in these situations. And that's not to say that you didn't have down days. If you're comfortable, were there any days where you were like, I don't think I can do this?
Oh, definitely. Most definitely. I think the surgeries were days. I think post-surgery days, maybe like a couple days after. When you finally take that look in the mirror and you see the scars that have been, you know, made on your body and that are healing, and you in your mind, you try to think, "Okay, how is this gonna look once it's finally healed?" You know how it looks right then, but, there's scars that we don't want, and the look sometimes depressed me, especially before I got, like, the final revision done.
Yeah.
It was like the initial mastectomy where I thought I was gonna look a certain way afterwards, and I didn't.
Mm,
Um, being a woman, a female, and having a part of your female body amputated or cut
right.
off,
Right.
it was a big deal. Mentally, it was a big deal. The healing process, the scars, especially during radiation, the burns, where skin had been broken, and I can't even put on a shirt because I have to just sit there with Silvadene ointment, you know.
Yeah.
I got some pretty bad burns during the radiation, and I think it was post radiation where the worst part happened because they say that your body, internally is still burning 3 to 6 months after your last radiation treatment. So my last radiation treatment, my skin looked fine. It looked like a sunburn, but then a month or two later, I mean, it got super dark, and then that's when the skin started, to break and things like that. So some of the after effects, I think, is not what people understand that patients go through
Yeah.
because
And
they're like, oh, she's done with radiation, she's good, not
yeah.
knowing that 2 or 3 months after, I'm still suffering the side effects. Things
Mhm.
are still coming on, even though the treatment was done months ago. I'm still, the residual effects of the treatments are still happening.
Yeah.
And that's
That's
the same thing with chemotherapy. A lot of days I tell myself now, in the present, that I felt better. Unfortunately, I felt better when I was going through chemotherapy because they give you so many, steroids and pain meds and things like that to, not make you feel the side effects. But then, like, once that's over and done, and now you're left post treatment, there's side effects.
yeah. That's important to know. I don't think a lot of people talk about that part of the journey. And as an outsider, I haven't experienced cancer for myself. So these are things I wouldn't know. So I really admire that you're willing to talk about these things because everyone, wants to support someone going through cancer and they're there for you and they want to do all the things. But does that stay afterwards? So, the human side of it is everyone asks about treatment, everyone, asks about what's next. And what do people not ask about that they should?
I think they don't ask about, like, everyone asks about what do you need going through breast cancer. So everyone's willing to, support you financially, monitor, they give gifts, they send things that you need. But it's like you pay co-pays during the cancer journey, but then once you have multiple surgeries and you've had a radiation 25 radiation treatments that you only paid a copay for while you were there, it's like the bills are still coming after this is all over, and it's like by the time you have a one big bill for radiation treatment, one big bill for chemotherapy treatment, and then you got all the surgeries that you've had that you only paid a copay for. And then once the bills are, balanced out to see what insurance is going to pay, what are they not going to pay, and you get, the leftover amount, financially, it's still a big deal post cancer, to get these things paid off and make sure that the doctors that cared for you are taken care of.
Yeah.
That, and then for me, there's still a medication that I have to take to stay cancer free, for 5 years. So, that's still an expense. And the side effects of that medicine cause other expenses. It's like a domino effect. The cancer itself is gone and it's over and I'm cancer free, but the residual, joint pain from the medicine that I have to take for 5 years, I think those are the things that people don't see. I
Yeah.
mask it well. I maintain, the joint pain. That's the number one side effect from the medicine. But then it also comes with chronic fatigue. So it's like, how do I maintain energy for my family, my daughter and the things that she has going on and work day in and day out? How do I maintain my energy level when I'm taking something that causes chronic fatigue and joint pain and I still have to walk from the garage to my, my work area? Those are the things I think that a lot of people don't see and don't think about.
Yeah. Yeah. And was there a part of this journey that was harder than you expected? Or were you like, "Okay, I expected this to be hard?" I mean, you are a fighter and you strike me as, none of this being a surprise, yet I know people that are fighters, myself included, that
Yeah.
we don't let people see that side. So
Right.
so what was that part like for you? The
Um,
parts that were in private.
right. Um, Emotional, I would say. I would say the parts that were hardest for me were the emotional parts, to where I would just literally like, wait until everybody was away from home, especially my daughter, and I would just scream into my pillow, and or either I'm driving in my car and on the freeway nobody can hear you. And so I would just scream or call a friend and just yell, and they're like, finally after 5 or 10 minutes, "What are you yelling for at the top of your lungs?" Because I'm like, "This is so ugly. I hate these scars," or, "This is not what I thought it was gonna be." Just things like that. And yeah, I never for a while, I would say for the first maybe, 3 months maybe. I would say the first 3 months of the journey, I kinda questioned, "Why me?" Because
Yeah.
I knew how much I cared about even my setup, my table setup for the patients that I encountered. I knew how much I cared. I knew how much I put into it. I knew how much I, wanted everything to be sterile and ready. And if I had the opportunity, I would, touch my patients and pray for them, whether they knew it or not. And it's like, how do I wind up as the patient? And then, it kinda things after 3 months, I would say, and things finally set in, I finally realized that it wasn't just, "Oh, you got this." I turned my table into being the chosen one.
Mm,
I turned because I'm like,
mm,
God only chooses, challenges for those that can handle it. And so at that point, I'm like, "You know what? Instead of saying, 'woe is me,' I should be honored to have been chosen for this challenge that God knew that I could handle as a single mom with my young daughter. He knew I could handle it. So I'm like, hey, you know what? He knows I'm something. He knows I'm somebody and he knows I can handle this. So let me put in front of me the fact that I can handle it.
that's beautiful. Was there any part of this journey in this season that you questioned him? Like, "What are you doing? what, like, why? Where? How did you reconcile that? Like you said, you turned this into positive thing, which I hear that. How
Mhm.
did you do that?
I think it was just meditation and literally just trying to sit and hear from God. It was prayer, it was meditation, and it was like what does God have to say to me about this, about why I'm in this situation?
Yeah.
And,
So
and a lot of it came with him wanting me to depend on him more, and grow closer. Even though I felt I had a pretty close relationship prior to this, it drew closer. And people always say their prayer closet is deep, but it got deeper. So it was definitely an increase with my closeness to God and my relationship with Him, and just walking the walk that people needed to see. I would say
yeah, and I know that you said God downloaded a book to you during this time.
yes.
So tell me a little bit about that book and what that looks like for you now.
So that book looks like I'm gonna go ahead and finish it because I started it while I would go, while I was taking chemotherapy. I would sit there. Sometimes I was there for hours, So I would sit and I would write, and I would get uh names for chapters and all that, and the cover for the book. I have all that, about the author. I'm just working on the finished part of it. And for me, it's an inspirational book that I want to be able. I don't care if it's not a number one seller. If that's God's will for the book, fine, I will accept that. But my vision for that is to be able to go to different chemotherapy lounges or centers, and just to be able to give it to people and bless them, to help them along their journey, because that's just something that I feel is in me. I know
Yeah,
that people gave me books and things like that, and it wasn't necessarily anything like what I'm writing or finishing up at this time, but I feel like it's going to be something that can definitely inspire and motivate um individuals during any type of journey. I didn't At first I was focused on breast cancer, and then I'm like, you know what, people have other types of cancer. And not only cancer, but people have other types of health challenges that they need encouragement and motivation to get through. So I kind of turned the book into a whole like inspirational, motivational, book, instead of just, focusing on one particular type of illness.
that's
Because
beautiful.
once I got, past, breast cancer, then I started to say, hey, I want to do awareness for all types of cancers, because you see the different color of ribbons. And I didn't want to just, even though that's breast cancer has my heart, I'm mentoring now with that. But I didn't want to just focus on that, because I don't want anybody who's going through cancer, and no matter what color their ribbon is, I still want them to know that they deserve recognition, motivation, and inspiration. So the book will be just an overall, for anybody who's going through any type of challenge that they need, help with.
That's beautiful. And that, what a way to turn your pain into a purpose, because that was a tough season. Like, you fought cancer for a year and a half, but it didn't end when you finished your treatment, like you said. So it's an ongoing journey. It's an ongoing process. And I've, um, really seen you, like, we've had these conversations before about where your heart's at with this, which is why I wanted you to be able to share some of that, because you didn't just survive cancer. Like, you are thriving, even though you still have challenges. You're in a place where you can encourage others. And I've seen you take the hand of somebody who's walking through cancer and, like, you know what? I just found this out. Boom, I'm right here and I've got you, girl. Like, you are so incredible at that. And it's been an honor to watch you do that. And it's really beautiful to see. And I know that if I had to walk through this journey, I would want someone like you beside me. And I think that it's extremely beautiful. And
Oh, thank you.
you're
That's
welcome.
I take it as I wear it with a badge of honor, because I think that anything we go through in life is to strengthen ourselves, and also help and encourage others and be there for them. And so anytime, I have a friend or a family member or just somebody that knows me in general, and I get that phone call, I put on that badge of honor, because I really think it's so important for the downloading into them to take place, as far as like what they might go through or what they can experience or who they can call in the middle of the night. And so, I've put myself in a position to be that person that, that is an open book for questions and, research and things like that. I've mentored, I would say, a good maybe 10 people at this point. And, it's not necessarily breast cancer. The majority of them have been breast cancer patients, but even patients that have other types of cancer that are just looking for, hey, what works best for nausea, or what did you take for pain, or, just anything. Even the items that I was blessed with that I had left over from my cancer journey that I didn't use, I've been able to bless other people who are going through breast cancer with some of those things. And I just enjoy it. Gives me great joy to meet and greet with somebody who's about to start their journey and give them a care packet, with things that help me, to be inspired and motivated to put the gloves on and fight.
Yeah, I love that. And that speaks to being part of your community and being of service and
Right.
loving people well. So that being said, who did that for you? Is there somebody in your journey that loved you in a way that inspired you to keep going? And
Yes. I had quite a few people. Um, I'm trying to think. There's so many. I mean, I want to say this. My family was definitely there in the beginning. They were my rock. But like friends, just the outpouring of I can't even say items I needed, from the water that I, chose to drink, to Ensure, to the body armor, for flavor, for just things I needed. Um Surgical, dressings and pillows, post cancer. So it was just an outpouring. I had several mentors during my cancer journey who had gone through breast cancer, who would allow me to ask questions, and during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, take me to different events to just keep me busy and not focused on what the real was at that time. And I truly appreciate those people that stood in the place where I needed them to be during my journey. And I think that's why I'm so passionate and so eager to do it for others.
yeah, that's awesome. I do have, on this podcast, one of the things that we talk about a lot is being a sacred witness. Like, you can't always fix everything. We shouldn't fix things. People are going through their process, like we can witness. And sometimes being a witness requires us to just be quiet. And the flip side of that is sometimes people just aren't aware of that. So there's a difference in witnessing somebody and trying to fix somebody. And was there anything that people said to you that maybe wasn't helpful unintentionally, but were there things like what should I know if I'm going to talk to somebody that has cancer? What are the important things to know to say or not say? Like, did anybody come at you with something that just doesn't land and like, hey, for the record, don't ever say that to somebody. Like, I want to know
Absolutely.
these things.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Tell me it
So
all.
I will say, it's bittersweet um to have gotten care at the facility where I work at. It's different because people know you and people see your name on the schedule, and automatically, so as operating room workers, we know that, hey, someone's getting a portacath, they need chemotherapy. And it seems just like things went so fast. Everything moved so fast that before I could realize that I was on the schedule to get a portacath, and everybody in the world that works here is going to know that I'm going to get chemotherapy. I had people approaching me, individuals that were like, hey, you don't have to get chemotherapy. And I'm looking at them like, okay. It was shocking the number of people that were volunteering information that I necessarily didn't want. I just didn't want.
Mm,
I would say that was a thing. The people that encouraged me to do take the holistic route instead of the chemotherapy route, that was overwhelming almost. Um, the people individuals that tried to guide me into the direction of not getting reconstruction done. They're like, hey, why don't you just do something else there instead of getting reconstructed? And I'm thinking to myself, at 40, I think I was maybe 42 at that time. I had a birthday, and I'm like, well, I'm still young. I still have a
Kind of want my
desire to
boobs. Yeah.
I still have a desire to look normal. I have a child. I
Yeah.
gotta go places, and so, I the thing is, I think, and I thank goodness I was always able to maintain my composure during those weird questions and the advice, the unwanted advice.
Yeah.
I never went off on anybody. I never made rude comments or things like that. But in my mind, I'm like, how dare you tell me, what I should choose for treatment?
Yeah.
My whole mindset throughout this journey was to be here for my daughter for as long as I could be.
Yep.
And, based on what I was told, chemotherapy was what I needed. And a lot of people, I think, don't understand that once you have cancer in a place and it's traveled to lymph nodes that are positive, it's in your system. So you need a systemic treatment to get rid of that. And, fortunately, I understood that. I'm a very, I try to treat most things holistically. However, if you have cancer and I feel like if it's traveled to a different place in your body, the lymph nodes are positive, the closest ones to that area, you need something that's going to be, in your bloodstream to get rid of that wherever else it may be. And that's just kind of was my focus at that time. Um, I didn't totally throw away the advice to get holistic treatment because at some point I was just tired of chemo.
Yeah.
After the first 6 treatments of chemotherapy and seeing myself and feeling what my body had gone through, I was just like, okay, I don't know that I want to keep going with this. So I did seek holistic, physicians and their advice. And even with their advice was for me to continue chemotherapy.
Wow.
And so that's what I did. I was like, okay, if I've gone to 3 different ones and they don't know each other, appointments on the same day so that I could gather all this information. I'm like, okay, well, obviously, if the holistic physicians are telling me, yeah, you need to finish that chemo, then that's what I need.
Yeah, and they're
So,
grounded in reality, not like
yeah, yeah.
outer space
So,
trying to just tell you this might work. Like they were honest with you. That's important.
it's very important. So I feel like even and you asked me like what were some of the weak points or what were some of the down days. I think that was maybe like one of my down days where I literally had taken like a day to go to a morning appointment, a noon appointment, and an afternoon appointment to go seek different holistic physicians and see like, hey, let me get not only a second, but a third and a fourth, opinion to see like, do I really need this much chemo? Because it gets to be discouraging when you have to go and get the port hooked up and you're sitting there and there's bags to be hung and you're losing your mind because the 4 walls in that room are closing in on you. It's just like, okay, do I really need to keep doing this?
Yeah.
And so I think that was one of my down days when I was like, I had to accept the fact that I needed more chemotherapy than what I had already had, you know, 6 plus a surgery. I was ready to be done you know, that was after the first 6. Long story made very short, I wound up having 20. And
Wow.
that was at every 3 weeks, every
Oh,
3 week
girl.
time
Yeah.
frame. I had a total
Yeah.
of 20. So it was a lot, and it was a large pill to swallow, especially after the first quarter of them. I had enough, I thought in my mind.
No kidding. That I can't even imagine that, Tennille. That had to be really hard to swallow that for sure. And, it's got me thinking as you were talking about, our body image and our femininity and like how this isn't what you expected. And so now that you've seen reconstruction from both sides, so,
Mhm.
as the surgical tech side, prior to having all this done, and then now you're on the other side of that, has this changed the way that you think about body image and femininity?
It definitely does. I see, why people come back for like the revision, after revision. I talked to you earlier about some of the patients that we may see, 2 or 3 or 4 times to try to get things right and get their body image back to what it was pre-cancer or prior to the diagnosis. But it's like, it's important. It's really important when a woman looks in the mirror and she wants to see herself the way she came into this world.
Yeah. And
It's and it it's more important for some than others. Some people are just like, hey, I'm at a certain age, I don't care. But I think for the and, for I would say for some of the young and some of the older women, they still want the look. And it just they'll do whatever it takes to get that. There are still days that I look in the mirror and I'm just like, I'm not happy. But on the flip side of that, I have to be grateful for the creativity and the level of skill that the plastic surgeons have, that they're able to recreate us as best they can.
Yeah.
I think the thing the statement that I keep at the front of my head day in and day out when I look in the mirror or when I get out of the shower and I'm not 100% happy, but I'm like 70% happy, is the fact that my plastic surgeon would always tell me, like, every visit, pre-op, post-op, he was like, our goal is to have you looking normal as possible with clothes on. And so I kind of have to say, okay, you look this way in the mirror. You have scars. This is up. This is not even with this. But how do you look with clothes on? And that's what most people see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just have to, I still have down days even now because the scars, I don't care how much scar treatment you put on, and they never will completely go away. And you will always have a reminder of what you went through as a breast cancer patient. And I could tell you every scar on my body, whether it's a drained hole or I could tell you what it was from. And that's because it kind of stuck with me when I was going through that time. I'm like, oh yeah, this was this strain from this surgery, and this was this strain from two surgeries after that. It's amazing how things stick with you. And I at the end of the day, I think we have to look at the glass half full and not half empty because um I'll never forget a very close friend of mine gave me a poem about scars. It was after one of my surgeries, and it was, with the get well card, and it basically told a whole story about the scars that we have and what they say about us and our strength.
Yeah.
And so I tried to, have that engraved in my mind because when I look in the mirror and I get unhappy and I'm like, why is this still here? Why won't this scar totally disappear? It's still partially there. And I'm like, you know what? All of these things tell a story about me and who I am and what I've been through and what I've survived and overcame. And sorry, I'm getting emotional. Things
Nope.
like
Don't
that.
be sorry, girl. I
Yeah.
got you.
So the scar, anybody out there who has scars that are from surgeries or medical challenges, just let them tell the story and remind you of how strong you are and what you've been through and what you've overcome. Because at the end of the day, we're still here, and that's what's
Yeah.
most important to our friends, our family, our children, and other people that love us.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. Well said, Tennille. Well said. And if a woman is facing reconstruction right now, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that things are going to get better and things are going to look better. If someone's going through reconstruction right now, it's probably, the beginning phases of what things will potentially look like. I would say things are going to settle different from what they are now. Scars are going to heal. And at the end of the day, acceptance is key.
Yeah.
Acceptance is key.
I think
And
that's
but
huge.
yeah.
Yeah. So talking about life now, um, you know, 3 years cancer free.
Hmm.
Yay. It's
Yay.
amazing. I love that. And you're just radiant and um it's so beautiful and such good news. Not everybody has that outcome, but for you you did, and you've got a purpose to encourage others, and I see you doing that, and it's amazing. But I want to ask you one thing.
Okay.
And so having that experience and walking through cancer, what has cancer made you unwilling to waste time on?
Um, I would say anything that doesn't matter, basically. Foolishness, drama, opinions of others. That's
Yeah.
huge.
Powerful.
Though that I don't waste time or thoughts or energy per se on those things anymore because I think going through what I went through and getting on this side of the fence as a survivor, I take every day for what it is, which is life. You know, every day is life. Every day I'm still here. Every day is purpose. And so for me to fulfill that purpose, I have to be focused on the things that matter and not things that don't matter. So things that don't matter or, like I said, negative energy, um, hearsay stuff, anything that's just not, on the positive scale of things to me, are just not worth putting my energy into. And I say that with a sentence to follow. There are negative things that happen in life that I still put energy towards because I know that I can make them better. So, if it's something like, for example, someone calls with a diagnosis, I'm going to give that example. That's not necessarily a positive thing, but it's worth me putting my energy into because I feel like I can help better that situation.
Yeah. So you get to decide what's important and what matters and what doesn't matter.
Yes.
So that's important. And I think that's for anybody. I live by that too. Like I get to decide what I'm going to put my energy into. And sometimes we decide to put our energy into something that may be worth it, even though it's hard or maybe not the best news. Like you
Right.
said, I love that example. It's not always about avoiding pain or avoiding the bad. Like it's inevitable. We're going to face those things and we get to choose what drives us and puts one foot in front of the other. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Has it changed the way that you love?
Um, yes, absolutely. I love, um, I think more like nowadays, love is more unconditional because I had to go through a period of time because like I said, when I was diagnosed, I was a single mom. So I had reality kind of set in for me like, hey, I still want, marriage and I still want a husband. God has blessed me with that, by the way. But I realized I still want those things and I want someone to look past my faults and my scars and, all the surgery holes and things like that. So, if I want unconditional love from someone and I want someone to love me and look past what I've been through, without fear of, whatever someone's fear might be, having someone who's gone through cancer, I've learned to love unconditional after what I've been through. And that's for not only, my husband that God has blessed me with, that's with my daughter, that's with my family members, that's with my friends. It's helped me to love more unconditionally because I know and I think all not only myself but people that are in my circle, we all realize that life can be cut short. And so, it's important to love without um letting the things that don't matter interfere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's
Hmm.
really beautiful. And if more people could get a hold of that, I think this world would be a better place,
I think so
personally.
too.
I
I
think so.
totally agree with you. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Tennille, for your beautiful light and your love and your story. And one thing I like to ask all of our guests, and especially as you mentor others through this experience,
Hmm.
we hold space for others, we care for others, we pray for others, we love others, all of the things, but ultimately you have to take care of your own self too. So what are some of the ways that you release the things that are not yours to carry and the things that are not yours to carry on? Like holding space for someone is one thing, but how do you walk through that process of self-care and releasing that in your own story on the day-to-day? What does that look like for you?
I would say prayer. Prayer is the main thing daily that holds me. I pray morning for sure, morning, noon, and night. Sometimes in between, a lot of times in between. And I think that prayer in combination with letting things go that you can't control, that's very important now because it's more so important that I don't carry stress as opposed, as a survivor, it's not good. So I've had to really condition myself and learn to live a life that is as stress-free as I can make it. And so with that, to me, and I often have someone had to remind me the other day, one of my church members, and I thank her and I love her for this because I was carrying some stress, not knowing that I was, and she told me to let go and let God. And I had been doing that for a while, but we get comfortable or we get, life takes this turn or that turn for us, and we forget the principle that we stand on or that we stood on before the stress came about. And so I think I would give anybody that particular advice. Let go, let God, pray, and we only have control of so much in our lives. And before we end the show, the talk, I want to let the audience know that you are amazing.
Aw.
I think you came back to our OR when I don't know, I know it was before surgery. But I thank you for coming over to, I think it was one of my treatments. That's when I first met you. You came over with some of the other ladies to, a day that was a huge milestone for me. It was the last day that I had to have chemo and radiation together. I mean, it's those days that I had to have both were huge. Because like I said, I had chemo every 3 weeks, but radiation was every day for 5 weeks. And, it was a lot of those, a couple times it fell on the same day. So I thank you for, just being an open book and becoming my friend and understanding and accepting me unconditionally, um, for what I was, at that time. I think you met me when I probably had no brows and no hair and no lashes, and you still loved me as a friend. You welcomed me with open arms, and I thank you for that. And I think that you are an amazing pillar in our community.
Oh, thank you. And don't make me cry. Jeez. Ugh, that's the nicest thing you could ever say. Thank you very much. But
And I mean that. I truly mean it.
oh, well, I thank you for the same. You've just always been a bright light where we are at work. And I know this is outside of work, but I'm just so grateful and honored that you would give us your story and trust me with that. And I know that the witnesses that got to hear your journey will take something from it, whether they're going through cancer or they're going through divorce or whatever loss they're going through. There's ways to process that grief, and that I just hear so much hope in your story, and I love that about you. And before we close, I just want to take a moment, as we do at the end of every episode. You know what's coming, guys. We're going to just take a moment and take a breath in, palms up. And then we're just going to push our palms to the sky, release our breath, and let go of something that doesn't serve us today. Thank you, Tennille.
Thank you so much, Belle, for having me on. It was an honor to be on with you guys today, and I thank you very much for having me.
I love you.
I love you too, friend.
Oh, guys, thank you for witnessing Tennille's story today. I hope that you heard from her the things that I know about her, that she's kind, generous, thoughtful. She keeps it real. She tells it like it is. And she knows who she is. And so that's very special to me, that somebody could come on and just be authentically themselves. And one of the things that stayed with me the most from this conversation is the way that she reframed her scars. What once reminded her of loss eventually became a reminder of strength, survival, and the life that she fought to keep, and the example that she was to her daughter. I think that is incredibly powerful. And I think that's true for me anyways, and so many of us, that our scars, they may not all be visible. She talked about, people not seeing her scars because of her clothes, but I think that's profound. We all have scars that maybe people can't see. And I just hope that her story reminds you that healing isn't always about returning to who you used to be or who you were. Sometimes it's about becoming someone even more compassionate, more resilient, maybe more deeply rooted in what matters, letting things go. So thank you again for spending this time with us. I hope this conversation encouraged you and that you would consider sharing with somebody who may need a little hope today. And as always, remember that you are loved and worthy of being witnessed. See you next time.